A difficult job. How do we introduce Professor Harjeet Singh Gill, who has become institution in his own lifetime? How do we introduce him? Simply enough, Professor Gill is here in person. I think this is enough. Our friend Ishwardal God has published a book on his Khana Badosh Danishwar, Professor Harjeet Singh Gill. मैं लभ रही खाना बदोश कौन है तो पटियाले जाते सी पंजाबी यूनिवर्सिटी 3 साल मैं पढ़ाया शाम ਨੂੰ बड़ी सारी कोर्ट 'ਚ इकला बंदा घूम रहा जा रहा गल नहीं करता किसी नाल तो कौन है कहता ही इज ए वेरी वेरी बिग स्कॉलर एंड आई वाज स्केयर्ड ऑफ टॉकिंग टू हिम एंड ही इज बिग बिकॉज he made sacrifice. So, most of us, we become teachers by chance. I'm not getting anything, so let me try college teaching or maybe let me... Now, here is a man who did his PhD from Paris and he was narrating in Paris, there is no defined system, no defined topic to teach. That is the real test of learning. When you go to the class, you are not aware what will be taught. Here, we are clear. Kota la kaise passes in this. And that with that training, he was made many offers of jobs. He says, no, I have to serve my motherland. I have to serve my parent state, that is Patiala, Punjabi district Patiala. So great contribution of Professor Gill was that normally, we studying in Punjabi, we have a disadvantage, I must accept. And I opposed, when I was there for 3 years in Punjabi district Patiala, I opposed shifting over to Punjabi medium. My reason is very simple. A good book comes in English, is translated properly or improperly, and after 3 years you get a copy. So I said, let us have 2 categories, MA Honors, English medium, MA normal, boy or girl, they want to show off, look who are MA from. So for marriage purposes, MA is fine. But for scholarship, you must have bigger knowledge. So Professor Harjeet Gill did a service to us. Some of the rare pieces of knowledge which would have reached Punjabi students after years. First they will be translated to English, from English to Punjabi, and he did direct translation from French to Punjabi. That's how he enriched. That's why we respect him so much. And he was a professor, had many things, linguistics, Punjabi University, Jawaharlal Nehru University, he is still there as a professor, Emeritus. And we requested him in our last to last meeting, Dr. Punita Singh sitting with us, we requested him to be a patron of this institution, which is named after a literary figure called Bhai Singh. So, I don't have much to say except to offer my gratitude to Professor Gill, Professor Sugata Bhaduri, his wife, he has a Punjabi connection. She has a Punjabi connection. I don't know whether she makes him Punjabi or he makes you Bengali, I don't know. And our old friend Ishwardal God, who was dear to my mentor Dr. Harjeet Singh, and my young friend Yadindra Singh, who have a love-hate relationship. I love him because he is very learned. I don't hate him, but I think I disagree with him. When he makes it a point, sometimes, you have to compromise. He says, no sir, this book will not be released. And this was recommended by a very high person in my system. It was not released, by the way. So, I don't say I hate him, but I think he caused me difficulties. And I used to tell him, Bete, as a young lecturer, I was rebel like you. When you become the principal of the college or a vice chancellor of the university, you have to compromise to survive. So, either he sacrifices not to become the vice chancellor, If he wants to, if he wants to remain a rebel, fine. So with these few words, I now request my colleague Herman to conduct the function and introduce the guests in better details. Herman.
Sat Shri Akal, respected dignitaries and dear friends. Today we are gathered here to celebrate the 555th anniversary of Shri Guru Nanak Dev Ji, and in honor of that we have requested Professor Harjeet Singh Gill to give us a lecture on the Baba Nanak and his cosmic discourse. There could not have been a better person to lead this discussion, as he has done immense work on Guru Nanak Dev Ji. He has written a biography named Baba Nanak, and he has also translated his whole poetry, and he has also written a book on cosmic vision of Baba Nanak that does the semiotic study of the structures given in Baba Nanak's poetry. And for those who are new here, since we have friends who are not from the Punjabi department or the related academic disciplines, I would like you to know that Professor Harjeet Singh Gill was the first Punjabi who went to France, and he was the one who was in direct contact with the main theorists of that time, like Foucault, Derrida, Althusser, and he is the one who made a cultural bridge between Punjab and France. And he returned to Punjab in 1968, where he taught in the Punjabi University, Patiala, and he established the anthropological linguistics department there. And there, it was the first time that he did the direct translations of the French text to Punjabi without from the French to English to, not indirect, that is already done, that French texts were first translated into English and then to Punjabi, but he was the first one who translated French text directly into Punjabi. And after working in Patiala University, he moved to Jawaharlal Nehru University, and where he is currently also Professor Emeritus, and he has written a number of books, the major being Punjabi Atlas of Linguistics, Fulkari from Bathinda, Guru Nanak Bani, and Cosmic Vision of Baba Nanak. With these words, I would like to request Professor Gill to give his today's lecture. Thank you.
Discourse. But what happened is that recently I got this book, Arabic Philosophy, and this book was published 2004 or something. I came to know English very recently. What is very important here is that Baba Nanak in his udasis had gone all over India and also to the West. West means Middle East anyway. And he went to Baghdad. I mean, that is that's very well known, historical fact. The interesting thing is that we always associated Baghdad with a center of Islamic culture or Islamic philosophy. In fact, it is not at all so. See, this book makes it, and this is published by, the Cambridge Companion of Arabic philosophy. It's not just, it's not written by the Muslims also. It's written by, a number of articles are written by Christians, Jews, and most of them are Christians. And most of them are professors of philosophy in different departments in Europe and elsewhere. What is interesting is that when the Roman Empire, when the Romans conquered Greece and that part of the world, the philosophers and intellectuals of Greece first tried to migrate to Roman Empire. But they were not at all welcome there. So most of them went to Baghdad. Baghdad at that time was a center of great intellectual activity. And in the 9th and the 10th centuries, a very large number of Greek books in Greek, of Plato and Aristotle and all others, were translated in Arabic. So there was a great movement, massive movement of translation from Greek to Arabic. And the translators included not just Muslims, Greek, Christians, Jews. As a matter of fact, the best known, well-known translators were both Christians, father and son, and then there were Jews who also were working on. So it was, in the beginning was mainly Plato, and after that Aristotle became the most important philosopher then. There were a number of translations and retranslations and commentaries on the works of Aristotle. And this went on for at least in very intensive way for 2 centuries, 9th and 10th century. Now we started with 8th century, but in the beginning emphasis was more on Plato, but later on it became. Then there are 2 major Arabic philosophers, Ibn Sina and Ibn Rushd. In Latin they call them Sina and Emeritus. These are just names. Especially the commentaries on Aristotle by their most important translator and philosopher, Ibn Rushd, were retranslated into Hebrew and Latin. See? And and in a way, see, for a number of centuries, when the Roman Empire was at this height, maximum, nothing was going on there. Intellectually, that was desert. And I have a book, Bertrand Russell's book. He himself says that the Romans, first of all, they did not, they were not interested in education. And that is why the most interesting thing is, he said, the Romans and the Roman Empire wanted them to be industrious, hardworking, and stupid. Because if you want good soldiers, you see, if the soldiers start reading books, they are very bad soldiers. Okay. So now I have sort of written this small book, Baba Nanak in Baghdad and the cosmological discourse. So I am not moved. So I will read some in the beginning. In the 15th century, Baba Nanak travels to Baghdad during one of his udasis. This was the period of extreme intellectual and metaphysical fermentation in the Arab lands. During his sojourn in Baghdad, Baba Nanak obviously had a series of Siddh goes with the intellectuals and seers of the period. His work, is a testimony to this dialectical interaction. What I want to say, intervene here, that when Baba Nanak goes to Baghdad, in say 15th century or the beginning of the 16th century, that was a period that all those scholars were primarily interested in the works of Aristotle. And he was called in Arabic Aristu. So Baba Nanak naturally had a series. So when he goes there, after all, in those days, first of all, it must have taken him a year to reach there on, foot. There was no buses or trains or etc. And then he must have stayed there for some time. He had obviously dialectical interaction with them, talked to them, and see the most important philosophical paradoxes which were raised there were discussed. And in most ordinary terms, even you can say, what is this creation? How it was created? What is life? What is that? These common fundamental issues. What is man? And then, if you read carefully Baba Nanak, his main compositions, you see he is trying to grapple with these paradoxes and try to handle them in a very sophisticated, metaphysical, philosophical way, which I'll give examples from. Especially, I have taken only two compositions, Japji and Maru Soleh. There are so many others, but for this. Now, let me first read a few quotations from the Cambridge Companion to Arabic Philosophy, 2005. And these are only quotations. The history of philosophy in Arabic goes back almost as far as Islam itself. Philosophically interesting theological disputes were underway within 2 centuries of the founding of Islam. At the same time, some important scientific, medical and philosophical texts from the Greek tradition were being studied and used in the Syriac tradition. It's a little earlier than what happened in Baghdad. By the 3rd century of the Muslim calendar, the 9th century, a great translation movement centered in Baghdad was in full bloom. In response, Muslim, Christian and Jewish philosophers writing in Arabic began to make important contributions to a tradition of philosophizing that continues alive to the present day. You see, and this is the basic quotation. Then you have another, these are articles, this is from Richard C. Taylor, I'm talking about Averroes. The works of Averroes lived in translation into Hebrew and Latin. In the Jewish tradition, his translated works, the middle commentaries, generally rather than the long, were studied intensely and gave rise to their own super commentary tradition. See, the smaller commentaries, which were the smaller books of, let us say, Aristotle, were introduced by the Jewish translators, commentators, philosophers in Judaism, and then they led to another tradition of what is called the super commentaries in the Jewish philosophical tradition. Then you have this is from Charles Burnett, Arabic into Latin, the reception of Arabic philosophy into Western Europe. And this is the quotation. Arabic texts, therefore, contributed massively to the building up of a coherent, curriculum of Aristotelian philosophy, represented by the numerous manuscripts of Corpus Vestius and Corpus Recitatius, which was to remain the center of university teaching training for many centuries to come. See, this work then was reintroduced into Europe through Latin translations of these work that was actually done in Arabic. You see? So it was Aristotle interpreted by the Arabic scholars. It was not just Aristotle directly, where I will talk about Russell and why I don't like that. Because he presumes that it's direct. He completely ignores this tradition. And it's a very classic book on Western philosophy. And now I'll show you how dishonest and racist he was in presenting the history of Western philosophy. You see, now this is also, first I gave you a quotation from Russell himself. While the Romans, according to Bertrand Russell, were industrious, brutal, obstinate and stupid. This is a quotation, not my words. And again this quotation, and the state considered education unnecessary because they wanted only farmers and the soldiers. For centuries, the Arabs from the 8th century onwards were the most enlightened people who had, with their marvelous commentaries on Plato and Aristotle, brought the intellectual renaissance in Europe. Who had, with their works translated into Hebrew and Latin, influenced heavily the Jewish and Christian philosophy forever. See the Renaissance. Who is responsible for the Renaissance in Europe in the 13th, 14th century? It is the Arabic philosophers. Why? Of course, it is their interpretations of Aristotle, I mean, not of Quran or this is not a question of Islam. It's a question of that they were at that time, 9th and 10th century and onwards, the Arab scholars, they were the only ones who had worked very intensely and very incisively on the great works of the Greek philosophers. Now my critique of Russell. Interestingly, on the one hand, Russell says very clearly that in Roman Empire nothing was going on as far as intellectual tradition is concerned. Then he says, interestingly, the same Russell completely ignores the Arabic philosophical movement in Europe and begins to write his history of Western philosophy as a mathematician, because Russell was a mathematician, and as a physicist, without paying any attention to the undercurrent of philosophy and metaphysics in Greek and subsequent philosophy. No wonder he wrote about, this is also very important, that if you read this book, The History of Western Philosophy, after presenting several chapters on Plato, and Plato's dialogues, it is Socrates who is the main speaker, in like place. And he says, because Socrates was not a scientist, and he says after the death of Socrates, Russell says, he says that he should, Socrates, he says about Socrates, says, as a man, we may believe him admitted to the communion of saints, as a saint. He was a great saint, he agrees. But as a philosopher, that's what this says, he needs a long residence in a scientific purgatory. What does it mean? It means he does not recognize Socrates as a philosopher or Plato as a philosopher. So, now my reaction to it is, in fact, it is Russell who needs a long residence in a philosophical purgatory. This is also, it's not a very simple affair, it's a very complicated affair. If Russell did not pay much attention to Plato, Socrates as a philosopher, the same is true for his attitude towards Aristotle. For him, Aristotle was primarily a biologist. Of course, that we know, that compared to Plato, Aristotle was a physicist, scientist, and it was so many branches of science are due to Aristotle. But he did not realize that it is the metaphysics and not physics of Aristotle that influenced first Pierre Abelard in the 12th century and Saint Thomas Aquinas in the 14th, and subsequently the whole Christian philosophy. You see, why Russell fails to understand, and why, of course I will say he's dishonest and he's racist and all that, but it's more than that. He was simply not mentally, intellectually equipped to understand it. You see, Martin Russell was for him, philosophy without science doesn't mean anything. And for the philosophers, science is, like Socrates said at that time, in the beginning, when there was rain or floods or something, something that went on in the physical world, in the stars and planets and everything. So there were always people used to go to, even today, they go to churches and temples and they pray there. And the Greek philosophers, the scientists, they said, no, these are simple physical phenomena. Like we, they can tell you today, if you listen to the radio or TV, that after 2 days it will rain. And this prediction has nothing to do with the gods. They are not gone to the gods to find out. They simply say it's a physical phenomenon, it's nothing, so you don't have to bother about it. But then Socrates comes, he says, okay, these are stars and planets and the world of the physical world is okay, but what about mind? What goes inside the man? What goes on thinking? What is thinking? He is interested in human being as thinking beings. Like later on, for example, Descartes said, cogito ergo sum, and in translation in French, which is very bad translation, je pense donc je suis, I think therefore I am. Actually that's a wrong translation. It is cogito. Cogito is cognition. I cognize therefore I am. Even otherwise, even if you take I think therefore I am, you see, now I come straight to Guru Nanak. For me, see, when I say that he went to Baghdad or he had interaction with the, I'm not talking about influences or borrowing. These are nonsensical things. There is interaction, dialectical interaction with, when two philosophers, two seers, two thinkers meet each other, they discuss. And they according to their understanding, they constitute their own discourses. So Guru Nanak constituted his own discourses, but it is not created in a void. That's what I am saying. See, there was a context of philosophical thinking. And if I'll quote from Japji, just only a couple of things. First of all is the Mool Mantra. In the very first Ekonkar Satnam, its name is Sat, it's designated as truth, Sach. It's not a person, it's not a Jugendar Singh, Vinder Singh. And it's purely, it is a being which is perceived as such, truth. And then of course, Asa, Jagat, Sach, Habi, Sach, Nanak, Sach. That this truth, this is how, the way I at least understand, Guru Nanak tried to explain the creation of this creation, of this Brahman. That in the beginning of the beginning, let us say, there was such truth, Yugat Sach and and then during the historical period, from one yoke to another. It is such that was the main criterion of deciding everything. And then it is followed by the future OCB such, and then it will, even when there is nothing else, what will remain is such. If you want to understand this, then there is in the 15th Maru Sole, you have all read it, Ardun Narbo Tendukara. So Guru Nanak says, in the beginning, there was nothing. You see, or shunya or darkness, whatever you want to see, Tendukara, means there was nothing. And this went on for centuries. And then, I mean, according to this sloka, or this composition, 15 composition, 15 of Marusola, that he thought of, or something happened, and then the creation took place, the beginning of creation. And there also, he says, in the beginning, actually he says, he doesn't say this is what happened. He says there was no sun, no moon, no man, no woman, no, he gives a series of all those things which came later. He said there was no sight. There was no man, no woman, there were no children, and there were no kings and no princes and and there was no fighting. And then they started fighting with each other. And then the religion came, and the religious centers, they were always calling, God is this, God is that. And this, he says, he went on and on, then came the gods, Brahma, Mahesh, and all these. He says they were, and also he says they were in the beginning, they were only cosmic energies. They are not God, a God cannot have a form. Even Guru Nanak says it is Nanank, it has no akar. And even these have no akar, because you see, a God who is supposed to, God of birth and God of growth and God of decay. These are the three aspects of this. But these are aspects of energies and aspect of, is a way of saying that this is how it works. You see, there is a beginning, there is a growth, and then there is a growth. And on and on. He says that all these disputes and all that is what's wrong with today. It is because of the fact that in the beginning there was nothing, none this, then no man, no woman, no sun, no moon, no day, no night. All these, if you read these, it is there. And then as the historical process continued, we have what we have today. You know that in the 17th century, Rousseau, who are all educated people here, Rousseau tried to explain, these are only ways to explain. He said, what is wrong with European society today? It is because once upon a time, there were no states, there was no capitalism. There were people lived in jungles. And there was no family as such, like the animals don't have, they have production, reproduction, but they are no family. Nobody is a mother, nobody is a father, nobody is this, nobody is that. So they are all quarreling on, and nobody has any estate. They are all living in jungle. See, there is no property. Nobody owns any property. And then they started owning property, and then quarreling with each other. And then slowly, what we have in 17th century Europe. Why I want to bring it this is that these are sort of the philosophers trying to explain something in terms of some hypothetical, presentations. So, what I now, second part is primarily now on Guru Nanak. See, with these introductory remarks, we come now to Baba Nanak, who visits Baghdad in the 15th century. During his long sojourn in Baghdad, he had had a series of Siddh ghosts with the native philosophers, seers and sages. And in this dialectical interaction constituted a unique cosmological discourse. Let us follow this discourse in his compositions, especially in Japji and Moral Service. Japji I just started again. I will read some of these things. For example, this translation of Ek Omkar Satnam Karta. See, there is Ek Omkar, for the unity of the. There is but one unique truth. The Creator without fear and faction, beyond time and space, beyond birth or death, reflected upon with the grace of the Guru. There was truth in the beginning of the beginning. It held the rhyme and rhythm of the cycle of time. This truth holds the present in a certain resonance. It will be there in the future. It will be there forever. Now, my comments. If you read it carefully, try to understand it. What does it present? There is anthropology and there is cosmology. There is past, present and future, which is more anthropology. More about this world. There is a past and present and future. There is also the universal time. That is not the same thing as past, present and future. The universal space, both birth and death are transcended in this universal truth. All the elements of anthropology are transcended in the mental images of meditation and reflection. Baba Nanak often refers to the two states of Gyan and Dhyan, of knowledge and meditation. You see, here I give you, for example, there is, Guru Nanak says, Jo aaya so chal si. ठीक है? Whoever born dies. As simple as that. And then the same Guru Nanak says, at another level, because these are several, what I am trying to say is, there are several levels of understanding this very paradoxical process. Then the same Guru Nanak says, na koi aave, na koi jaye. You understand? That in a way, it is very simple to explain also. That Mohan Singh, Son Singh, they are born and they die. But man, the idea of man is not born or it doesn't die. You see, Mohan Singh and Son Singh died, but the man doesn't. You see, the idea of man is not a given man, not a specific man. There is the universal. See, everything has two aspects: specificity and universality. You see, this is the whole idea, the idea of man. And then even to the extent, there's another place, he says, na ko hoa, na ko hoye. This is also Guru Nanak says. That even very existence, there are two levels of existence. One is, this is a book that exists, but the idea of a book doesn't exist. Idea of a book that is not yet written and probably will never be written. See, the idea of man is a pure intellection, pure imagination. See, this is why the book that I have here, on which I wrote about that French philosopher, you see, it is called Abelard's theory of mental images and pure forms. You see? That it deals with not empirical reality, but conceptual reality, philosophical reality, or cosmological reality, whatever you want to call it, which is there, but which is not there. Merleau-Ponty, for example, a French philosopher says, it's like a horizon. You see, you see it, but when you go there, it goes further. You can never reach the horizon. So So in a way it is there also, but it is not there. This is why Aristotle also said that, you see, philosophy deals with images which have no basis. Because these images are the creation of intellect. See, Guru Nanak says, see, when there is a question of khand, you know, towards the end of Jaldi, see, you have, you see, I'll come back, but first I do that. See, जिथे तिथे घाड़त घड़िए बहुत अनूप. This is body number 36. तिथे घाड़त घड़िए बहुत अनूप ताकि गला कथया न जाए जे को कहे पीछे पछताए. Then, even more than that, तिथे घड़िए सुरत मत मन बुद्ध. तिथे घड़िए सुरा सिद्धा की सुध. You see, in the Taksal of Baba Nanak, in the atelier, the workshop of Baba Nanak, what is he trying to, what is being created there? And what is important for Guru Nanak? For Guru Nanak, what is important and what he wants to, his disciples to be. इथे कड़िए सुरत मत मन बुद्ध. This is pure intellection. Surat, intellection, reflection, perception, logic. You see, तिथे कड़िए सुरा सिद्धा की सुध. Used to understand that, see, when Descartes says, you pass don't, you see, I am, I think, therefore I am. See, Guru Nanak in this Taksal is creating, or he is saying, what is being created there? It is thinking beings. Surt Matman both means what? Those who think, those who reflect, those who try to understand. You see, there is logic, and then even the last is to take ye sura siddha ki, where the wisdom of the wise is being created, or the sages of the sages is being created at the highest possible level. But this is wisdom. This is no prejudice, no. You see, this is not Vayam. This is not the domain. See, that is the whole idea. The domain that Guru Nanak is interested in is domain of pure intellect and pure logic. And there even the forms are, जिथे कड़िए तिथे घाड़त कड़िए बहुत अनूप, where beautiful, sublime forms are created. You see, and these are even those forms are not just ordinary beautiful forms. You see, no, is it? I mean, at certain other levels, maybe he said something else. One important thing that I want to emphasize is that Baba Nanak interacted with the greatest philosophies of the world, and constituted his own discourse at least not going beyond, but at least at that level. For me, it is even going beyond. You see? Because, for example, in this creativity, Plato was a mathematician. And he said, when for the creator, he says there was already matter, and God sort of organized, arranged, he was a mathematician, he was a geometrician, this kind of. These are explanations. And for Aristotle, he said not no, but he said his explanation was that the creator is a prime mover. That's the term he uses. That there was a matter and all these things. And then the creator pushed or gave a kind of push in such a way that after that the stars, the planets, they keep on moving, with forces of gravity, with forces of this. Sometimes they go this way and that way. What is this nonsense? I don't need it. I can talk. Right. I think you should forget it. Yeah.
Just put it on the side.
No, I can talk. When you talk about Guru Nanak, you don't need it.
Let it be.
Close it.
It wouldn't trouble you.
Yeah. Too much of mechanism is also stupid. Actually, the great philosophers try to understand, this creative process, how this universe was created. So they have their own way of. And Guru Nanak, one of his way of doing it is in the 15th composition of Arbun Narbat Undukara. This is how he envisages the process. There was no solution, I can even read this somewhere. Yeah, this is 15. See, this is how this Arbun Narbat Undukara begins. Arbun Narbat Undukara, Taranna Gagna Hukuma Para, Na Din Ran, Na Chand, Na Suraj, Sun Samad Lagayana. You see, the creator was sort of involved in his Sun Samad. Actually, the word Sun Samad also comes again and again in his writing. Samad. Samad also, you see, internal. Like Plato also says that what your internal eye, the idea of the soul sees, 1,000 eyes with other eyes cannot see. So, this concept of Sun Samad is not just sitting there and closing your eyes. See, it is also a concept. You sort of try to understand from within. This is why the two words that Guru Nanak uses again and again, one is Gyan, the other is Dhyan. Gyan, Dhyan. And he uses more, sometimes together. You see, for understanding, there are two processes. The one is the process of Gyan, the knowledge, empirical knowledge. And then is when you go beyond that, that is Dhyan. And in a way, both are necessary. See, that is again a difference between the Guru Nanak and the others, because they try to separate the two. You see, that Baba Nanak said, no, there is a point of departure. And then you go further. You see, you cannot ignore this world also. But even to understand this world, you have to try at another level of understanding. Okay. So that is the example. Again I can go back to that, and because the last line, I did not say present. First, जो आया सो चल सी, ठीक है, there is no problem. Then the same Guru Nanak says, especially in हमारे सोले, ना कोई आवे ना कोई जाए. then even na ko hoya na ko. Then he says, he goes further, and that is most disturbing also for all our scholars and believers. He says, ast, nast, eko now. You know what does it mean? See, to be a theist or an atheist, they're not different. See, there is at the highest possible level of understanding, discerning, even to believe and not to believe, to be a theist or atheist, because at that level you cannot, it is only a search. This search has no, see, like knowledge has no frontiers. Right? Even the Arabic philosophers also, the term that use is justju. It is a continuous process of learning, of understanding. Something like that. Then, actually there are so many things, but no use because it becomes boring anyway. Then another very important philosophical issue for me in Guru Nanak is that his presentation, the first statement is quite disturbing. Dukh daru, sukh rog pya. See, for Guru Nanak, dukh is a remedy. Dukh daru. And sukh is rog. Sukh is disease. No, this dukh is not just a serpide. It is a man tries to understand what you are, who you are, and then you realize that you don't understand. And then you suddenly, you are dukhi. You are not happy, existentially speaking, you are not happy with the state, existence state you find yourself in. And then he says, this is for me, the most important statement from which I will draw some my own conclusions. He says, Diva mera ek naam, dukh vich paya tel. Now what does it mean? Naam, Dham is Gyan Dhyan, the lamp of enlightenment. Jiva mera ek naam, dukh vich paya te, is lit by the oil of suffering. See, suffering is an extremely important theme in all religions. For Buddha, who is supposed to have meditated, reflected upon this suffering, dukh, more than others. Everybody is there. But, you see, for him also the dukh is mostly physical suffering. When he goes out, he sees old men and, sick people and all that, and he says, what is going on in this world. Guru Nanak's dukh is not because the fellow is sick or the fellow is old. It has nothing to do with that. It is a philosophical statement, metaphysical statement. And this is why he says this statement that I have translated the way I understand this. Diva mera ek naam dukh vich paya te. the lamp of enlightenment is lit by the oil of suffering. I think this is one of the most important philosophical, not the other, philosophical contributions for any religion. Because all religions, all temples, all gurdwaras, all churches, whatever it is, why you go there? You go there to get rid of dukh. There are gurdwaras which are called Dukhanwaran. There are temples which are called Sankat Mochan. Even if you go to a church or a mosque, why you go there? You want to get rid of your dukh. And here comes Guru Nanak, who says dukh is dukh daru sukh rog gaya. And then he goes to the extent even to say, "Ye bhi daat teri datar." This is dukh is a gift of God. Now, this is an entirely different epistemological statement, which you do not find in any religious tradition, any other religious tradition. See, it is, there are so many others. And even there is a statement, this is also from 14th Barisole, Sagle Dukh Amrit Kar Pive. See, this is where it is. Anyway, I have quoted from one of these. Sagle Dukh Amrit Kar Pive. All suffering is taken as Amrit. I mean, when he said, "Ye bhi daat teri datar," same kind of statement. He says it is actually Amrit. Dukh is Amrit. As nectar, with this enunciation, Baba Nanak presents an epistemological cut in the philosophical tradition of all religions. Earlier, he had declared Dukh, suffering, to be a cure and Sukh, a disease, even more so when he said, "Diva mera ek naam dukh vich paya tel," the lamp of enlightenment is lit by the oil of suffering. See, the philosophy of suffering is not just an ordinary philosophy. And that we also should know that all religious philosophers in all religions have been trying to understand it and trying to find some solution. And here comes Guru Nanak. He says, there is no need. Dukh in a way, dukh is actually a daru. It's not a disease. It's not rog. You see? Because when you are, the way again and again this thing comes, that when you are in dukh, in this kind of suffering, see, it leads to Sat Santokh Saj Sanjam. This is a statement of Saj. You see, one place is Dukh Sukh Samkar Jane. There is also a book like this, statement like this, enunciation. That, see, a mental stage, a spiritual stage, you arrive at, which is a stage of Saj. This is again, you go back to Asad Jugasa, it is a stage of Saj, harmony, rhythm. See, this is harmonious. And this is not a stage of conflicts. See, there are two types of mental stages. The mental stage, one is of conflict within or without. It doesn't make any difference. There are conflicts within, there are conflicts without. And then there is that is stage of absolute harmony, of absolute sage. And this is what I feel, that when we try to understand Guru Nanak's philosophy, see, until now, for the last couple of 100 years, since scholarship started, Guru Nanak is presented only as a reformer, Sudarak. He was against caste system, he was against this, against this. Fine, I am not saying he was not a reformer. But that is one aspect. The most important aspect is when he talks like a philosopher, when he tries to understand absolute reality. One is reality which you can see, and he addresses that, not that he doesn't address. I am not ignoring. He talks about if something goes wrong, he addresses, he makes a statement. But then he has several levels of understanding of this world, of this humanity, of man, woman, life, death, of the universe, of Brahman, which is of a very different type and of a very different level. And that is where he arrives at a level which is, we can call it transcendental, we can call it sublime, whatever you want. There are so many ways you can also. So I think I will stop here. Oh yes, I have a, yeah. See, before that, I see most of my statements about Guru Nanak this thing are also derived from a book written by, actually it was released last year, Sachkhand Vasi Nirankar by Kamal Randava. She couldn't come. And I have requested Professor Shugato Bahaduri of Jawaharlal Nehru University, Professor of English, to say a few words after what I have tried to say. Professor Bahaduri, please.
Right. So thank you very much for asking me to speak here. So I would not know much about Guru Nanak's cosmology at all to be able to speak on that. But I thought, and as Professor Gill also told me, that partly what he would have talked about today and partly what he wanted to talk about was this precise thing, which he kind of began his talk with and also ended his talk with, that first of all, we should not look at Guru Nanak's thoughts as being merely religious or primarily pertaining to a particular faith, but that we should look at it philosophically and locate it within a tradition of philosophy. So that was point number one. And point number two, which he began his talk with, and which in a way forms the sum and substance of this book of his, which he has already mentioned, one of his latest books, Baba Nanak in Baghdad, which is that how, furthermore, philosophy itself probably doesn't emerge from sectarian beliefs, but rather philosophy itself is something that gets produced in syncretic atmospheres where there is exchange of thoughts, and particularly in our current times when, as he said at the beginning of his talk also, a general Islamophobia probably paints maybe Baghdad as merely being a metonym of the same, and an entire people as probably being not that knowledge driven. And furthermore, it's not just a question of Islamophobia, but general sectarianism worldwide. We have become so fundamentalistic and we have become so sectarian that we need to probably also talk about that and foreground that regarding Guru Nanak's own trip to Baghdad and his interactions there as to how maybe, so that's the second objective, to also dispel some of our latent sectarianisms and fundamentalisms, and whereby we can instead cultivate this age-old history of ours where we exchanged ideas, where we continuously entered into conversations with people and syncretically enriched each other. So these being the two objectives which I can probably touch upon rather than anything to do with Guru Nanak's cosmology fundamentally. So I will talk about that only, and just for a couple of minutes. So primarily about Guru Nanak in Baghdad, and this I need not tell a vastly informed audience here that according to the Janam Sakhis, of course, Guru Nanak, while on his way back from Makkah and Medina, made a stopover at Baghdad where he stayed for 4 months. But that is what the Janam Sakhis say. So Janam Sakhis and hagiographies often report many things which may or may not turn out to be true ultimately. But it so happened that it was very strongly believed, because there were other sources also, other textual sources emerging from the Islamicate corpus surrounding Baghdad, which also suggested that someone called Nanak Pir, someone called Nanak Fakir had come to Baghdad and stayed over for 4 months. And so it so happened during the First World War, and this is something that I'm sure all of you are aware of, when a significant number of Punjabi troops and many Sikh soldiers too were in Mesopotamia during the First World War. As you know, there was a significant deployment of troops during 1914 to 18. That a certain doctor of the Indian army, Sikh himself, he actually following the textual clues, ended up discovering the actual spot where Guru Nanak apparently stayed in Baghdad, and it is located just off what is currently also the Baghdad West railway station, and it's basically a burial ground in which there is a tomb of someone called Pir Behlol, and I'll just touch upon Pir Behlol in a minute. And in the tomb of Pir Behlol itself, this particular doctor of the Indian Army, a Sikh doctor of the Indian Army during the First World War, 1914 or so, also discovered a slab. And that slab written in the Arabic script, but the language is Ottoman Turkish language, but the script is Arabic. He discovered an inscription, and which says that this is the very spot where, the name given there is Baba Nanak Fakir. That is exactly how it is spelled in that particular inscription. Had come, and here a structure was built later by the grace of God, etc., etc. And a year is also given there, which is 9. And there is a slight dispute. I'll come to the epigraphic disputes in a minute. So it's 917 Hijra, AH, or 927 Hijra. So there is a bit of a dispute there because the inscription is partly faded, but whatever it is. So it would be either 1511 or 1521. So the dating was also done. There have been some disputes concerning the inscription, because there is a suggestion that not only is the inscription later, because even the content of the inscription is that a structure was built here later, so it doesn't really date back from Guru Nanak's times, and also because it's in Ottoman Turkish, and Ottoman Turk conquest of Baghdad happened only in 1528, and which also I'll just refer to in a minute. So there were some disputes. Also there were some disputes that maybe the epigraphic evidences suggest that some of the letters may have been actually overwritten, and maybe Baba Nanak Fakir was actually inserted later. It was originally some other person's name, but one would not go into that debate. The point is that it's fairly established now. It's fair, apart from there being some debates about it, that Baba Nanak did spend time in a particular shrine of someone called Pir Behlol around 1511 or 1521 for 4 months, and regularly interacted with them. Pir Behlol is a very major, he is still considered a very major saint from Baghdad, and their interaction produced a whole body of discourse. But that incidentality is not only the thing that interests us. What interests us is, and as Professor Gill also began his talk with, the site Baghdad itself, the site Baghdad. Baghdad in 1510s, and we'll have to go a little further back also, because as I said, in 1528 Baghdad was conquered from the Umayyad Caliphate, Khilafat, the Umayyad Caliphate by the Ottomans. The Ottomans actually defeated the Umayyad Caliphate, but whatever. So 1511 was still very much under Umayyad Caliphate. So Baghdad had emerged as this major site of global intellectual interaction, and which Guru Nanak also became a part of for 4 months and contributed probably significantly to it. But what is much more important, as I said, Guru Nanak's incidental trip to Baghdad aside, this centrality of the space, and Baghdad is a successor of sorts, because during the Umayyad Caliphate and Abbasid Caliphate, a little while back I said, by mistake I said Umayyad Caliphate, I meant Abbasid Caliphate. The Umayyad Caliphate's capital was Damascus. So initially Damascus was of course the site of translations, the particular translations that Professor Gill already referred to, what is generally called the Greco-Arabic translation movement. That is a whole a term that all of us are familiar with perhaps. And as he rightly said, so after the fall, maybe towards the first days of the Roman Empire, still there was some retenance of Greek philosophical texts within the Greco-Roman context. But after the fall of the after the fall of Rome in 476 AD, as you would know, and with Eastern Empire being settled around Byzantium, and which is today's Constantinople. So it's not that there was no, let's say, retention of Greek philosophy, no retention of Plato, Aristotle, etc., but it was not significant. And though in Byzantium, the Greeks, and Byzantium being a Greek-speaking city, there was some amount of discussions around the Greek philosophers Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and many others, but it was absolutely rivaled by the Umayyad Caliphate and its basis in Damascus, becoming the epicenter of translation. And the point that the Umayyad Khalifas wanted to prove right from the 7th century AD onwards was that we are better than those Greek-speaking Byzantines. And that was the point whereby it was taken upon them. So it was not that the Greek text didn't exist, but that they should be translated in Arabic and retained in a better manner, preserved in a better manner, and circulated in a better manner. That was the point. And then with the coming of the Abbasid Khilafat, the Abbasid Caliphate, the capital shifted from Damascus to Baghdad, and then started probably an even golden age. And in Baghdad there was this major site, and which also archaeologically still exists, which is called Bayt al-Hikmah, which is the building of wisdom, the building of knowledge. That was the main library, the repository, and where thousands, practically the whole of Aristotle, a significant amount of Plato, and not just these, significant texts of Greco-Roman philosophy, primarily from Greek, were translated into Arabic, and it did not stop there. It was circulated thereafter, because the Abbasid Caliphate, right from the Umayyad Caliphate itself, as you would know, the spread was right up to southern Spain, which is Umayyad Caliphate actually. And so the re-entry of Greek texts into Europe, and as Professor Gill pointed out, and then the fall of Constantinople in 1453, and even before that, already the spread of Ottoman Empire there, and then the capture of Baghdad in 1528 made the Ottoman Empire further from the eastern flank and the erstwhile Umayyad Caliphate from the southern flank flood Europe with these Greek texts, Greek philosophical texts by Socrates, by Aristotle, by Aflatun. These are the names of Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato in Arabic. So they returned through Arabic translation unto almost a re-territorialization into Western philosophy of Western philosophical texts dating from the 4th century millennium, etc. And this is a history that we must understand. This translation, this migration, this moving across religious borders of philosophical texts, and they being transferred back and building up together what would thereafter become the European Renaissance, and Guru Nanak also incidentally in 1511 or so becoming in a way a part of that process. These are all very, very significant, and in our times particularly, to understand therefore how cosmology itself has to be seen in these global forms, non-sectarian forms, these forms of exchange, these forms of going beyond fundamentalisms, and seeing how all knowledges intermingle with each other, move into each other, branch into each other. And that would be the real service that we can do to our times, to knowledge itself, and of course to our times, which are becoming so hateful day by day. So this is the little intervention that I could make here, and this history is really worth reading and worth following up.
Professor Ishudar Gaur, retired professor of history from Punjab University, Chandigarh, to say a few words. And he said he is going to speak in Punjabi, which is fine, no problem.
Yes, I'll speak in Punjabi. Actually, what I have gathered from the talk of Professor Gill and Professor Shugato is that what was happening in the Taksal of Plato, Aristotle, and Baba Nanak. Only the three things were happening, irrespective of time and space. One is there was the combination of three things: the senses, Indri Bodh, and Kalpana, Tasavvur, imagination, and third one is the cognition, that is the bodhic. These things were happening together in the Taksal of Plato, Aristotle, and Baba Nanak. This is what Professor Gill time and again is hammering upon, the cosmology of Baba Nanak, or the cosmology of philosophy. And he usually says that from anthropology to cosmology, from cosmology to anthropology, where the imagination and senses plays a predominant role. And the net result is the pure and pure mental images. Mental images. This is what today he also emphasized, that they together constitute the mental images. And mental images, very important thing to be shared with you, mental images are permeated with shunya. With shunya, which yesterday in JNU Professor Gill told that they are replete with the emptiness. That's a highly philosophical concept, that how mental images, how they are created, and how they are pure mental images, and how they are permeated with the shunya. And shunya is a very complex concept. Now, ਥੋੜੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਰਦਾ ਕਿ ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ in medieval times, I am a student of a history dealing with, I taught Baba Nanak for many years in the university. Now, in medieval times, unlike today, there was no difference between Sant, Danishwar, Fakir, and Darwish. Now, in modern world, we have different kind of connotations. But in medieval times, who is the saint? He is also a philosopher. A Darwish, a Fakir. Fakir who has renounced all things. A renunciation not in terms of the wealth, but renunciation in terms of every shade of prejudices, every kind of philosophies, every kind of views. He is not a determined, not he is a determining kind of a person. He is unconditioned, a thoroughly liberated kind of a person. He is. So these were the synonyms. Now Danishwar kaun hai? Danishwar is not stagnant. He is stable. And stable, जो stable है वो गतिशील है, is a dynamic. And इसलिए दानश्वर जिहड़ा हैगा वो किसे, he is not confined to the four walls. ਉਹ ਸੁੰਗੜਿਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਤੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਸੁੰਗੜਾਉਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ, ਉਹ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਕਨਫਾਈਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ। ਦਾਨਸ਼ਵਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਓਪਨ ਐਂਡਡ ਫਿਲਾਸਫੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਿਸ਼ਵਾਸ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਕੰਮ ਕੌਣ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ? ਡਿਟਰਮੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ, ਡਿਟਰਮਿਨਡ ਤੇ ਡਿਟਰਮਿਨਿੰਗ ਦਾ ਕਿਸ 'ਚ ਵਿਸ਼ਵਾਸ? ਆਈਡੀਓਲੋਗ। ਐਂਡ ਦੇਰ ਇਜ਼ ਅ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਸ ਬਿਟਵੀਨ ਆਈਡੀਓਲੋਗ ਐਂਡ ਅ ਫਿਲਾਸਫਰ। ਇਸ ਲਈ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਹੀ ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਅਲੱਗ ਉਦਾਸੀਆਂ 'ਤੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ। ਉਦਾਸੀਆਂ 'ਤੇ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ, ਟਰੈਵਲਿੰਗ ਟੂ ਹੈਵ ਏ ਡਾਇਲੌਗ ਵਿਦ ਅਦਰਸ। ਤਾਂ ਓਪਨ ਐਂਡਡ ਬਾਬਾ ਜੀ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਫਿਲਾਸਫੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਆਈਡੀਓਲੌਗ ਦੇ ਵਾਂਗਰ he is liberated from the boundaries of class, caste and religious boundaries or communitarian boundaries. ਇਸ ਲਈ ਇਹ ਬੁਨਿਆਦੀ ਸਵਾਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਗਿੱਲ ਹੋਰਾਂ ਨੇ ਇੰਪਲਿਸਿਟਲੀ ਉਠਾਇਆ ਕਿ ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਦਾ ਉਦੇਸ਼ ਕੀ ਹੈਗਾ, ਉਹਦਾ ਪਰਪਸ ਕੀ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਦਾਸੀਆਂ ਦਾ ਪਰਪਸ ਹੀ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਇੱਕ ਥਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਜਬ ਲਗ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਰਹੀਏ ਨਾਨਕ ਕੁਛ ਸੁਣੀਏ ਕਿਛ ਕਹੀਏ, ਕੁਛ ਕਹੋ ਕੁਛ, ਮਤਲਬ ਦੇਰ ਇਜ਼ ਅ ਡਾਇਲੌਗ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਡਾਇਲੈਕਟਿਕਸ ਦਾ ਮੀਨਿੰਗ ਪਏ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ। ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਗਿੱਲ ਹੋਰਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਇਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਕੁਛ ਸਪੈਸੀਫਿਕ ਰਾਈਟਿੰਗਸ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਜੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਪੜ੍ਹਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਫॉर एग्जांपल द कॉस्मिक विजन ऑफ ए बाबा नानक एंड देयर इज अ स्मॉल बुक also of Baba Nanak on the crossroad of east and west from anthropology to cosmology, and his next book is Baba Nanak in Baghdad, which he has recently discussed with us, and one is very important article on the path of truth, the philosophical meditation of Baba Nanak. These are the things, and truth and reason in religion and politics. ਇਹ ਕੁਛ ਰਾਈਟਿੰਗਸ ਨੇ ਬਾਬਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਗਿੱਲ ਦੀਆਂ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੜ੍ਹਨ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੀ ਕੋਸਮੋਲੋਜੀ ਸਮਝ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਤੋਂ ਪੜ੍ਹਨ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਿ ਕੋਈ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਪਲੈਟੋ ਅਤੇ ਅਰਿਸਟੋਟਲ, ਟਾਈਪੋਲੋਜੀਕਲੀ ਸਪੀਕਿੰਗ, ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ 'ਚ ਪਲੈਟੋ ਅਤੇ ਅਰਿਸਟੋਟਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਦੇ ਵਰ ਆਲ ਡੀਲਿੰਗ ਵਿਦ ਦੀ ਮੈਟਾਫਿਜ਼ਿਕਸ ਐਂਡ ਆਲ ਦਿਸ ਥਿੰਗਸ। ਪਰ another important point which needs to be shared with you, that ਕਿ ਰਿਲੀਜਨ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸਾਡਾ ਸ਼ਿਸ਼ੋਲੋਜੀ ਦਾ ਗਲਬਾ ਰਿਹਾ। ਸ਼ਿਸ਼ੋਲੋਜੀ ਨੇ ਰਿਲੀਜਨ ਨੂੰ ਡੋਮੀਨੇਟ ਕੀਤਾ। ਅਸੀਂ ਰਿਲੀਜਨ ਨੂੰ ਫਲਸਫਾਨਾ ਨਜ਼ਰੀਏ ਤੋਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੜ੍ਹ ਰਹੇ। ਵੀ ਆਰ ਟਰਾਈਂਗ ਟੂ ਅੰਡਰਸਟੈਂਡ ਰਿਲੀਜਨ ਫਰੋਮ ਏ ਸ਼ਿਸ਼ੋਲੋਜੀਕਲ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਆਫ ਵਿਊ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਸਾਡੇ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸ਼ਿਸ਼ੋਲੋਜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਜਮਾਤ, ਜਾਤ, ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੰਡ ਕੇ ਰਿਲੀਜਨ ਨੂੰ ਵੇਖ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ, ਅਤੇ ਰਿਲੀਜਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਖਾਸ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੀ ਫ੍ਰੈਗਰੈਂਸ ਹੈ। ਉਹ ਫ੍ਰੈਗਰੈਂਸ ਕੀ ਹੈ? ਇਟਸ ਅ ਨਾਨ ਡਿਨੋਮੀਨੇਸ਼ਨਲ ਕਾਈਂਡ ਆਫ ਏ ਫ੍ਰੈਗਰੈਂਸ ਇਜ਼ ਦੇਅਰ, and try to excavate that kind of a fragrance that's necessary, which is the message of today's talk of Professor Gill. ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਐਗਜ਼ਾਮਪਲ ਦੇਣ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ 18th century ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਨਾ, 18th century ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੇਨ ਸਟਰੀਮ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ ਹਿਸਟੋਰੀਓਗ੍ਰਾਫੀ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ ਹਿਸਟੋਰੀਓਗ੍ਰਾਫੀ ਕੀ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ 18th century ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਸਨੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇੱਕੋ ਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਸਿਖਾਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਫਰੋਮ 8th standard to PhD courses, कि 18th century is a century ridden with conflicts between the Muslims and the Sikhs. ये सब असी मेन स्ट्रीम हिस्टोग्राफी सब यही बच्चों को पढ़ाया 8 PhD तक, क्योंकि बिकॉज असी ना तो सिम्योटिक्स ट्रेंड है, ना सिम्योलॉजी ट्रेंड है, ना एंथ्रोपोलॉजी, मतलब फिलोसफी दे विच ट्रेंड नहीं। ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਪਰ ਆਈਡੀਆ ਆਫ ਏ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਨਾ। ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਹੋਰ ਆਰਕਾਈਵਸ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋ, ਉਸੇ 18th century ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੋ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੇ ਕੰਟੈਂਪਰੇਰੀ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ। ਜਦੋਂ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਲੜ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਅਫਗਾਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਜਦੋਂ ਮਤਲਬ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਟੱਕਰ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਜਦੋਂ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਇੱਕ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਰਾਜ ਸਥਾਪਿਤ ਕਰਨ ਦੀਆਂ ਕੁਝ ਹੀ ਸਾਲਾਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਉਹ ਕਰ ਲਏਗਾ, ਮਿਸਲਾਂ ਆ ਜਾਣਗੀਆਂ ਤੇ ਮਹਾਰਾਜਾ ਰਣਜੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਆਪਣਾ ਰਾਜ ਸਥਾਪਿਤ ਕਰ ਲਏਗਾ। ਉਸੇ ਟਾਈਮ ਉਸ ਸਿਚੁਏਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੋ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਾਇਰ ਨੇ, ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰਿਸ ਸ਼ਾਹ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਹੈਗਾ ਬੁੱਲੇ ਸ਼ਾਹ, ਐਂਡ ਥਰਡ ਵਨ ਇਜ਼ ਨਸੀਰ ਅਕਬਰਾਬਾਦੀ। ਨਸੀਰ ਅਕਬਰਾਬਾਦੀ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਘੱਟ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ। ਜਦੋਂ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਲੜ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ? ਅਫਗਾਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੜ ਰਿਹਾ, ਮੁਸਲਮਾਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪੜ੍ਹਾਇਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ। ਅਫਗਾਨ ਇਜ਼ ਸਮਥਿੰਗ ਐਲਸ, ਮੁਸਲਮਾਨ ਇਜ਼ ਸਮਥਿੰਗ ਐਲਸ। ਅਫਗਾਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਮੁਸਲਮਾਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਲੜ ਰਿਹਾ। ਤਾਂ ਨਜ਼ੀਰ ਅਕਬਰਾਬਾਦੀ ਉਸ ਸਮੇਂ, ਵਾਰਿਸ ਸ਼ਾਹ ਨੂੰ ਛੱਡੋ, ਵਾਰਿਸ ਸ਼ਾਹ ਤਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੁਛ ਲਿਖ ਰਿਹਾ, ਕਮਾਲ ਦੀ ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਇੰਪਲੋਟ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ ਸੈਂਚੁਰੀ ਨੂੰ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ ਟੋਟਲ ਇਥੋਸ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਹੀ ਇਜ਼ ਟਰਾਈਂਗ ਟੂ, ਔਰ ਨਾਟ ਟਰਾਈਂਗ, ਹੀ ਇਜ਼ ਵੈਰੀ ਸਕਸੈਸਫੁਲੀ ਇੰਬੋਡਿਡ ਦ ਇੰਟਾਇਰ ਇਥੋਸ ਆਫ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਇਨ ਹਿਜ਼ ਹੀਰ ਵਾਰਿਸ। ਪਰ ਨਜ਼ੀਰ ਅਕਬਰਾਬਾਦੀ ਨੇ ਕਮਾਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਉਸੇ ਸਮੇਂ। ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਉਹਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਨਜ਼ਮ ਦੀਆਂ ਕੁਝ ਲਾਈਨਾਂ ਸੁਣਾਉਣਾ, ਉਹ ਨਜ਼ੀਰ ਅਕਬਰਾਬਾਦੀ ਕੀ ਕਹਿ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ, है कहते नानक शाह जिन्हें, ये नज़ीर अकबराबादी लिख रहे जो लड़ रहे हैं मुसलमान ते सिख, है कहते नानक शाह जिन्हें वो पूरे हैं अगाह गुरु, वो कामिल रहबर जग में हैं यूं रोशन जैसे महागुरु, मकसूद मुराद उम्मीद सभी बर लाते हैं दिल खाह गुरु, नित लुत्फो करम से करते हैं हम लोगों का निर्भा गुरु, इस बख्शिश के इस अजमत के हैं बाबा नानक बह गुरु, सब शीस निवा अरदास करो बोलो हरदम वाहिगुरु. This is a Nazir Akbarabadi at the crucial moment of a history when there is a conflict between the Afghans and the Sikhs. Now he is composing this kind, he is paying this tribute to Baba Nanak. Try to understand the conflict resolution in Punjabi literature. So that's important which Professor Gill is talking about in his own philosophical idiom. So Baba Nanak ਦੀਆਂ ਉਦਾਸੀਆਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਧੁਰਾ ਹੈਗਾ, central axis of Baba Nanak travelings is ਕਿ ਮਨੁੱਖ ਦਾ ਵਜੂਦ ਕੀ ਹੈਗਾ, ਉਹਦੀ ਐਗਜ਼ਿਸਟੈਂਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ ਕੀ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਸੱਚ ਕੀ ਹੈਗਾ. ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਹੈ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਨਾ, ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਮਕਸਦ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਬਾਬਾ ਜੀ ਦਾ, ਇਹੀ ਮਕਸਦ ਹੈ. ਤੇ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੀ ਬਾਣੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਾਬਾ ਜੀ ਆਪ ਦੱਸਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਸਾਚ ਵਖਰ ਕੇ ਹਮ ਵੰਜਾਰੇ, इज इन सर्च साच वखर के हम बंजारे जा जब तक दुनिया रही है नानक कुछ कहिए कुछ सुनिए. बाबा जी दे ये बात इस सच बारे जिहड़ी चर्चा हैगी आ, ये चर्चा केवल फलसफाना डोमेन च ही हो सकती है, ये सोशियोलॉजिकल डोमेन या हिस्टरी दे विच नहीं हो सकती हैगी. सच की जो चर्चा हैगी आ, इस करके हुण सच की चर्चा करनी किवें है, हाउ टू कंस्ट्रक्ट ए डायलॉग विद द अदर, दैट्स मोर इंपॉर्टेंट. ਤੇ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਹਿੰਟ ਵੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੀ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਨਾ. ਦੇਰ ਇਜ਼ ਨੋ ਨੀਡ ਟੂ ਗੋ ਐਨੀਵੇਅਰ ਐਲਸ. ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਕੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਜਦੋਂ ਸਿੱਧਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਸਿੱਧ ਇੱਕ ਬਹਾਨਾ ਹੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ. ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਤਾਂ ਇਹ ਦੱਸ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਡਾਇਲੋਗ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਓਵਰ ਦੀ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਆਫ ਸੱਚ, ਟਰੂਥ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ, ਉਹਦਾ ਸਲੀਕਾ ਕੀ, ਉਹਦੇ ਮੈਨਰਸ ਕੀ ਨੇ, ਐਟੀਕੇਟਸ ਕੀ ਨੇ, ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਦੱਸ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ. ਸਿੱਧ ਸਭਾ ਕਰ ਆਸਨ ਬੈਠੇ ਸੰਤ ਸਭਾ ਜੈਕਾਰੋ, तिस आगे रह रास हमारी साचा अपर अपारो, मस्तक काट तरी तिस आगे तन मन आगे देओ, नानक संत मिले सच पाइए. This is what Professor Gill emphasized on this line particularly. नानक संत मिले सच पाइए सहज पा जस ले. In the company of the saints only the truth can be discussed. So these are the things which Baba Nanak, this was the aim of the Baba Nanak. So this was what. Now I'll share 2 or 3 things about Baghdad. Professor Sigato shared with you such wonderful things about Baghdad that being a student of history, I realized how much I know history. He has so explained in details. But anyhow, Baghdad, Baba Nanak ਜਦੋਂ ਬਗਦਾਦ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਬਗਦਾਦ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਅਬਦੁਲ ਕਾਦਰ ਜਿਲਾਨੀ ਜੋ ਹੈ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੇ 10th 11th ਸੈਂਚੁਰੀ ਦੇ ਸੂਫੀ ਨੇ ਜੋ ਕਾਦਰੀ ਸਿਲਸਿਲੇ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਲੋਂਗ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਕਸੈਸਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹ 16th ਸੈਂਚੁਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਦਾ ਹੈ. Now what happened? Why Baghdad is important? Baghdad is important because Baba Nanak ji ਨੂੰ ਉਸਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਸੱਚ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੱਚ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ. When Baba Nanak departed, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਪੈਨ ਲਈ ਸ਼ੀਟ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਂ ਚਾਦਰ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੁਰਾਨ ਦੀਆਂ ਆਇਤਾਂ ਲਿਖੀਆਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਹੈ. ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਲਪੇਟ ਕੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖੋਗੇ ਕਿ ਆਈ ਹੈਵ ਸੀਨ, ਮੇਰੇ ਕੋਲ ਆਪਣੀ ਪਰਸਨਲ ਲਾਇਬ੍ਰੇਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੁਛ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਤਸਵੀਰਾਂ ਪੇਂਟਿੰਗਸ ਨੇ 19th ਸੈਂਚੁਰੀ ਦੀਆਂ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਕੁਰਾਨ ਦੀ ਉੱਤੇ ਲਿਪਟੀ ਚਾਦਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੈਠੇ ਹੋਏ ਹੈ. ਉਸ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਲਾਇਬ੍ਰੇਰੀ ਹੈ ਡਿਜੀਟਲ ਲਾਇਬ੍ਰੇਰੀ ਮੈਂ ਉੱਥੋਂ ਕਲੈਕਟ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਸੀ ਕੁਛ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ. ਅਤੇ ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਨਾਓ ਵਾਟ ਇਜ਼ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ, ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਆਪਣੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਾਦਰੀ ਸਿਲਸਿਲੇ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਟ੍ਰੈਡੀਸ਼ਨ ਰਵਾਇਤ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਟ੍ਰੈਡੀਸ਼ਨ ਫਿਰ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਕਲਮੀਨੇਟ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ? ਉਹ ਟ੍ਰੈਡੀਸ਼ਨ ਕਾਦਰੀ ਸਿਲਸਿਲੇ ਦੀ ਕਲਮੀਨੇਟ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਮੀਆਂ ਮੀਰ ਤੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਲਾਹੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ। ਐਂਡ ਤੇ ਮੀਆਂ ਮੀਰ ਇਸ ਦੀ ਕਾਦਰੀ ਜਿਸ ਦਾ ਓਰੀਜਨ ਬਗਦਾਦ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈਗਾ, ਉਹ ਫਿਰ ਹਰਮੰਦਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੀ ਨੀਂਹ ਰੱਖਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ। Could we connect Baghdad with Amritsar and Amritsar with Lahore? That is the cosmology of the Punjab history. No. Again, there is one Qadri Sufi, prominent Qadri Sufi, Sultan Bahu. Sultan Bahu is a prominent Qadri Sufi of the 17th century. He talks about Baghdad also because it's the legacy of he carries forward the legacy of Baba Nanak. मैं ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਕ ਉਸਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਸਿਹਰਫੀ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰਕੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਫਿਰ ਵਿਦਾ ਲਵਾਂਗਾ। What it says, ਬਗਦਾਦ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਦੀ ਕਿਆ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨੀ। ਬਗਦਾਦ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਹ ਬਗਦਾਦ ਜੋ ਹੈਗਾ it resonates in Punjab till now. ਬਗਦਾਦ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਦੀ ਕਿਆ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨੀ, ਉੱਚੀਆਂ ਲੰਮੀਆਂ ਚੀੜਾਂ ਹੂੰ, ਤਨ ਮਨ ਮੇਰਾ ਪੁਰਜ਼ੇ ਪੁਰਜ਼ੇ, ਜਿਉਂ ਦਰਜੀ ਦੀਆਂ ਲੀਰਾਂ ਹੂੰ। ਲੀਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਗਲ ਕਫਨੀ ਪਾ ਕੇ ਰਲਸਾਂ ਸੰਗ ਫਕੀਰਾਂ ਹੂੰ, ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਬਗਦਾਦ ਦੇ ਟੁਕੜੇ ਮੰਗਸਾਂ, ਕਰਸਾਂ ਮੀਰਾਂ ਮੀਰਾਂ। So how Baghdad is so important, and Baghdad ਮੁਗਲ ਡਾਇਨੈਸਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਦਰੀ ਸਿਲਸਿਲਾ ਇੰਨਾ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਦਾਰਾ ਸ਼ਿਕੋ ਐਂਡ ਦਾਰਾ ਸ਼ਿਕੋ's sister, they were staunch follower of the Qadri silsila. These were the scattered kind of view that I have put before you. There is a need to collect them together and constitute a very good picture of Baghdad, which Professor Gill has shared with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Gaur. Now I would like to invite Dr. Yadvinder Singh. He is Assistant Professor at Department of Punjabi University of Delhi.
ਚਾਹ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਦਰਮਿਆਨ ਮੈਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਹੂੰਗਾ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ and please bear with me, I will also speak in Punjabi as I belong to the Department of Punjabi. ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਗਿੱਲ ਜਦੋਂ ਬੋਲ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਲੱਭ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਹਰ ਟੈਕਸਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਣ ਲਈ ਕੋਈ ਇੱਕ ਚੋਰ ਮੋਰੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਚੋਰ ਮੋਰੀ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਹੋਵੇ ਜਿੱਥੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਕੋਈ ਗੱਲ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਾਂ। ਤਾਂ ਕਿਤੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਮਨ 'ਚੋਂ ਆ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਵਰਤਿਆ ਜੁਸਤਜੂ, ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਅਚਾਨਕ ਹੀ ਸ਼ਹਿਰਯਾਰ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਗੀਤ ਯਾਦ ਆਇਆ, ਬੜਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਉਮਰਾਓ ਜਾਨ ਫਿਲਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਜੁਸਤਜੂ ਜਿਸकी थी उसको तो न पाया हमने, इस बहाने से मगर देख ली दुनिया हमने। बटन रसल ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਹਿ ਰਿਹਾ ਉਹ ਗਿਆਤ ਤੇ ਅਗਿਆਤ ਦੇ ਵਿਚਕਾਰ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਪੈਰਾਡਾਈਮ ਕੰਸਟਰਕਟ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ। ਗਿਆਤ ਉਹ ਆ ਜੋ ਜਾਣ ਲਿਆ ਗਿਆ, ਪਰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਤੋਂ ਜਾਣਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ। ਧਰਤੀ ਸੂਰਜ ਦੁਆਲੇ ਘੁੰਮਦੀ ਆ, ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਪਰ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਜਾਣਦੇ। ਬਾਈਬਲ ਕੁਝ ਹੋਰ ਕਹਿੰਦੀ ਸੀ। ਤੇ ਅਗਿਆਤ ਉਹ ਆ ਜਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਦੇ ਨਾ ਕਦੇ ਜਾਣ ਲਿਆ ਜਾਊਗਾ। ਪਰ ਇੱਕ ਤੀਜਾ ਥਾਂ ਹੈ, ਇੱਕ ਤੀਜੀ ਸਪੇਸ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅਗੇ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਨਾ ਜਾਣਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ ਨਾ ਜਾਣਿਆ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ, ਪਰ ਫਿਰ ਵੀ ਉਹ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਪੈਦਾ ਕਰਦਾ, ਇੱਕ ਸਵਾਲ ਪੈਦਾ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਿਤੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਡੀਲ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਾਸਮਿਕ ਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਗਿੱਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ। ਭਲਾ ਹੈ ਲਰਜ਼ਦੇ ਪਾਣੀਆਂ ਹੇਠ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਰੇਤ ਰਹੀ, ਭਲਾ ਹੈ ਭੇਤ ਦੀ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਭੇਤ ਰਹੀ, ਤੇਰਾ ਜ਼ਿਕਰ ਜੇ ਲਫ਼ਜ਼ਾਂ 'ਚ ਸਮਾ ਸਕਦਾ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿ ਲਿਆ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਸੁਣਾ ਲਿਆ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਭਲਾ ਹੈ ਰੇਤ ਦੇ ਹੇਠਾਂ ਲਰਜ਼ਦੇ ਪਾਣੀ ਸਨ, ਸੁਣਦੀਆਂ ਦਿਸਦੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਮਹਿਜ਼ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਸਨ, ਨਹੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਪਾਠੀਆਂ ਪੁਸਤਕ 'ਚੋਂ ਪੜ੍ਹ ਲਿਆ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਨਹੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਰਾਗੀਆਂ ਸਾਜ਼ਾਂ ਤੇ ਗਾ ਲਿਆ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਹੁਣ ਪਾਠੀ ਤੇ ਰਾਗੀ ਕਿਸ ਗੱਲੋਂ ਉੱਕ ਗਏ ਨੇ? ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੱਲ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਗਿੱਲ ਐਸਟੈਬਲਿਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਐਂਥਰੋਪੋਲੋਜੀਕਲ ਕੰਸਟਰਕਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਜਦੋਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਫੜਿਆ ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਦਾ ਉਹ ਪੱਖ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਮਾਜ ਸੁਧਾਰਕ ਵਾਲਾ ਹੈ, ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਦਾ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੰਸਨਟਰੇਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹੇ। ਔਰ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਕਿਤੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਉਸ ਡੋਮੇਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਹਿਣੀ ਪੈਣੀ ਆ। ਕੋਸਮੋਲੋਜੀਕਲ ਪਰਸਪੈਕਟਿਵ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਡੀਲ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਕੋਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੈਟਾਫਰਸ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਸਾਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹ ਰਿਐਲਿਟੀ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਫਿਜ਼ੀਕਲ ਰਿਐਲਿਟੀ ਦੀ, ਉਸ ਫਿਜ਼ੀਕਲ ਰਿਐਲਿਟੀ ਚੋਂ ਹੀ ਮੈਟਾਫਰ ਲੈਣੇ। ਫੋਰ ਐਗਜ਼ਾਮਪਲ ਮੈਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਬਸ 2-3 ਗੱਲਾਂ ਕਰਨੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਜਨੇਊ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ, ਬਾਬਾ ਨਾਨਕ ਕਿਤੇ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਕਿ ਜਨੇਊ ਪਾਉਣਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਗਲਤ ਗੱਲ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ। ਉਹ ਜਨੇਊ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਕਾਸਮਿਕ ਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੜ ਸਕਦਾ, ਗਲ ਸਕਦਾ, ਖਤਮ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ, ਉਹਦੇ ਪੈਰਲਲ ਇੱਕ ਦੇ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਜਿਹ 'ਚ ਦਇਆ ਹੈ, ਸੰਤੋਖ ਹੈ, ਸੱਤ ਹੈ। ਇਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਪੁਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਰਤੀ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਆਰਤੀ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਫਿਜ਼ੀਕਲ ਰਿਐਲਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਪਈਆਂ ਨੇ, ਦੀਵੇ ਨੇ, ਥਾਲ ਹੈ, ਧੂਫ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਕਾਸਮਿਕ ਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ। ਔਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਸਿੱਧਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਸਿੱਧਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਉਹ ਸਾਰੀ ਦੀ ਸਾਰੀ ਡੀਲਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਇਹ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਏਕ ਦ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਟ ਕਰ ਸੰਸਰ ਜਾਣੇ ਜੋਗੀ ਕਹੀਏ ਸੋਏ। ਸੋ ਬੁਨਿਆਦੀ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਿਸ ਵਰਡ ਨੂੰ ਡੀਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ, ਉਸ ਵਰਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜੋ ਚੀਜ਼ ਚੁੱਕ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ, ਉਹਦੇ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਨਵੀਂ ਚੀਜ਼ ਕੰਸਟਰਕਟ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ। ਸੋ ਕਾਸਮਿਕ ਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦਾ, ਉਹ ਕਾਸਮਿਕ ਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਕਿਤੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਉਸ ਇਹ ਮਤਲਬ ਇੰਨਾ ਸੌਖਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਮੰਨ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਗਿੱਲ ਬਾਰੇ ਅਕਸਰ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਦੋ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਐਂਥਰੋਪੋਲੋਜੀਕਲ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਕਾਸਮਿਕ, ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਮੰਨ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਅੱਜ ਉਹ ਸਸਿਊਰ ਬਾਰੇ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਇੰਨਾ ਕੰਪਲੈਕਸ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਇੰਨਾ ਸੌਖਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਸਿਗਨੀਫਾਇਰ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਸਿਗਨੀਫਾਈਡ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਉਹ ਹੈਗਾ। ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਉਸੇ ਸਪੇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਪੇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਡੀਲ ਕਰਨਾ, ਉਸੇ ਸਪੇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਨੈਕਟ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਹਿਣੀ ਪੈ ਰਹੀ ਆ। ਔਰ ਉਸੇ ਸਪੇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਹੀ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਡਕਸ਼ਨ ਆਫ ਸਪੇਸ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈਨਰੀ ਡੈਫਵੇਅਰ ਕਰਦਾ, ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਗੌਡ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਉਹਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਬੜਾ ਕਮਾਲ ਦਾ ਹੀਰ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਹੀਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਸਪੇਸਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਦੋਂ ਵਿਚਰਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਕੀ ਫਰਕ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਸੋ ਉਹ ਸਪੇਸ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਜਿਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਰਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਇਕੱਲਾ ਉਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ, ਇੱਕ ਸਾਡੇ ਮੈਂਟਲ ਡੋਮੇਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਸਪੇਸ ਬਣ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ। ਔਰ ਉਹੀ ਉਹ ਸਪੇਸ ਹੈਗਾ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਫਿਜ਼ੀਕਲ ਰਿਐਲਿਟੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਕਨਵਰਟ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਆ ਇੱਕ ਖਾਸ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੀ ਕਨਸੈਪਚੁਅਲ ਰਿਐਲਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਔਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੱਕ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਕਨਸੈਪਚੁਅਲ ਰਿਐਲਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਡੀਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਉਦੋਂ ਤੱਕ ਇਹ ਸਵਾਲ ਉਵੇਂ ਦਾ ਉਵੇਂ ਖੜੇਗਾ। ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ।
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to extend my gratitude to Professor Harjeet Singh Gill for sparing his time and giving us an illuminating lecture, and also to Professor Suboto from Jawaharlal Nehru University and Dr. Ishwardhyal Gaur and Dr. Yadvinder Singh for giving us the brilliant inputs to continue the discussion. So, this is not the end of the discussion. This discussion needs to continue, and we will continue it at some other time. For now, please join us for a cup of tea. Thank you.